we're going to get to the main goal of Tennessee versus Virginia. What is the main goal for the Vols against the Cavs, who I still expect to show up in shorts and a basketball jersey, because I still continually think of them as a basketball school, because they basically are. What is the main goal for the Vols against Virginia?
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
I think the main goal is pretty darn simple. It's to get more snaps under this offensive line's belt, get game snaps under this offensive line's belt. I'm sure you've decided by now with Andre Keurig at left guard, where Ollie Lane would have been, and you have Addison Nichols now. I think you've settled on your top 5. You've probably settled on your top 10 as far as your 2 deep. I think that, because I think Tennessee's going to win the game easily. So to me, the main goal is just make sure your offensive line is comfortable without Cooper Mays for however long that may be. I challenge you to come up with one goal that is more significant than that, Caleb. If they walk away from that game, walk out of Dotson Stadium, and they say to themselves, the offensive line, man, we're pretty good, we're fine, then that's game one. I don't care if they won by 1 point. I think it's better for Tennessee to feel good about their offensive line leaving that game and win by 1 point than to win by 60, because the Cavs turned the ball over 15 times, and you're like, man, we're still struggling in the interior of that offensive line. Because consider this grad school, these next 2 games, and you better be ready to go out and get a job in the real world. Because this is grad school. This is the last chance to get it right before you have to earn a paycheck. So that, to me, is clear cut. I feel like I should have let you go first, because maybe you would have said the same thing and I kind of chopped you off there. But I think you're going to have trouble beating me on that one, Caleb.
Well, the offensive line is going to be tested because Virginia has all 4 starters returning on their defensive line this year. So there is some experience there, which is helpful for an offensive line. I don't know how much you value that. I do know returning starters can, if they're not good, it doesn't matter that they're returning. But so maybe they won't be tested. I'm sorry, I disagree. The goal needs to be to have a Josh Heupel type of offensive performance. They need to hang 50 or 60 on Virginia. And the biggest reason they need to hang 50 or 60 is no one can pretend that Tennessee's not entering this game with some anxiety and question marks surrounding Joe Milton right now. And he's got this backup quarterback who I believe and you believe was created in a lab specifically to run Josh Heupel's offense. That is the most high-profile quarterback pickup Tennessee's had since Peyton Manning. Joe Milton's got to ball out, and Tennessee needs to hang 50 or 60, because if they win by 1, or if they win by 10, or if they win by 15, even if the offensive line plays well, Dave, you will immediately start to hear some Nico Iamaleava rumblings, and I don't think that's good for the team. So I think it's pretty – I'm not saying what you're saying isn't important. The offensive line really needs to find itself, but Joe Milton has got to hang 50 or 60 on Virginia. And he's got to blow them out. And not because Virginia turned the ball over 15 times. No, because he threw for 4 touchdowns and 875 yards. I'm kidding, not 875, but he threw all over the field. He racked up tons of yards. We have to walk away from this game on Saturday saying, man, Joe Milton is really good. Like, we have to be thinking maybe he is in the Heisman race. Because if he's not, we might be talking about pulling him.
Now, I'm going to disagree. I don't think the hook's that quick based off what I've been told. But I also think that Joe Milton will play well. And if Virginia has a couple of things with an offseason to prepare for Tennessee, just like back in the day, you had an offseason to prepare for, let's say, the option like Georgia Tech would run, or, say the wishbone like Nebraska would run. So they may throw some things out there that surprise Tennessee, and Tennessee has to adjust to. And Tennessee may win the game by 14 points. I don't think anybody's going to be pulling for Joe Milton to lose his starting job. Yeah, you want to go out there and impress people, but at the end of the day, man, if I'm walking out of there with a 1-point win and I feel really, really good about my offensive line, that's what I'm basing my success level on if they're able to control the ball, because you're right. This is a complete returning defensive line for Virginia. But their two best guys are probably edge rushers. So you should be able to push around the interior, even with an injured player, if you're an SEC team. So
you're not gonna feel good about the offensive line if they win by 1 point. I'm just gonna tell you that right now.
Well, then that gets back to your point of how does Joe Milton play. I guess what you're saying, there are a couple of things you're saying that I believe are almost out of the realm of possibility. I don't think this game's going to be close, and I don't want it to sound like it's a Tennessee Tech or an Austin Peay. It's not, but I don't think this game's going to be close. I think it'll be close until maybe a final score that Tennessee puts up, and they'll be up by 14 points, 2 touchdowns going into halftime. But maybe you and I are working off different premises that you think this is going to be a challenge. I don't think this is going to be a significant challenge for the Vols. So that's today's tough question. And now it's time for what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So I stole this, what the H, and it's about, should the Vols consider more neutral site games in Nashville for recruiting? So I stole what the H from Norm Macdonald's one season run on the sports show, if you remember that, and it was fantastic, but that didn't work out. Norm's tough to deal with. But did you know the movie Rounders? Have you seen Rounders?
No, but I know of the movie.
Great gambling movie. One guy has a serious problem gambling, and I found out over the weekend that that character was loosely based on Norm Macdonald. How wild is that? Norm Macdonald, when he gave up gambling, he actually took $60,000 he just won in Atlantic City and threw it into the ocean as a cathartic way to give up gambling. So we don't expect you to do that. And with Zen Sports, you will be making money back. Who will be Tennessee's best football player at the end of the year? I'm going to let you determine the criteria of what you say by best. Because you could say last year that Hendon Hooker was the best because he led everything. But on the flip side, you could say Jalen Hyatt won the Blitnikoff Award. So he was the best player. Best player brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, best service in the biz. Andy Mason, realestate.com. He is phenomenal. We love him. He's a part of my pending real estate transaction, and glad to hear that. Tennessee's best football player at the end of the year. I painted myself in the corner. I figured that out last week because I think Tennessee makes the college football playoff. So to me, it's got to be Joe Milton. If you have a quarterback controversy in the middle of the year, neither one of the quarterbacks are going to be considered the best player because Nico's going to make some mistakes when he comes in. Joe lost his job. The receivers, it's going to be spread out. I don't think Tennessee's defense, I think Tennessee's defense will be better. I don't think they have an impact player where you say he's the best player. I mean, based off my predictions, not yours, mine, I've painted myself in a corner. I can't go anywhere but Joe Milton. If I think they make the college football playoff, which I predicted that they will, it has to be Milton by my own criteria. Caleb, who would you pick?
It does have to be Milton if you're picking your best player, because otherwise Tennessee could be in trouble. But I am going out on a limb, and I'm going to say their best player this year is going to be Squirrel White. I think Squirrel White's going to be the one who, like Hooker last year was Tennessee's best player, but Jalen Hyatt got all the accolades at the end of the year.
Right.
I think Squirrel White will be the guy to get all the accolades at the end of the year this year.
I'm supposed to disagree with you, but I agree. If you want to talk about the best player as far as electric and at the end of the year everybody's crazy about, it's Squirrel. There's no doubt about that. But Brew McCoy is the more important receiver out of that group, because I feel confident Tennessee could place Dante Thornton in that slot and be fine. I think they could lean on Jacob Warren if they needed to at tight end and be fine. But Squirrel has an explosion and something that nobody else has. But the guy that's going to move the chains is going to be Brew McCoy. He's the most important receiver on Tennessee's team. And I'm told by scouts, he is the best overall player heading into the next level. And I believe it. I think the guy is powerful. He's impossible to press coverage. And then he's fast enough. He could be a little bit faster. He's fast enough to get open downfield. And he knows how to use his hands. It's slightly illegal, but he knows how to use his hands also to get separation. Travis says Brew McCoy might be the best wide receiver in the nation. He might very well. Squirrel White may still be the guy that everybody comes away and says, wow, that guy's fantastic. But the guy that's catching 12, 14-yard passes, 6-yard slants when you need 4, that's Brew McCoy. And he will be the highest drafted player going into the NFL that we know of. I'm not talking about like an Ethan Davis, a freshman that could blossom 2 years from now, but that we have good tape on. He will be the best player that goes into the NFL draft. But I gotta say Joe Milton, if my prediction holds true. I would be conflicted and contradicting myself if I didn't say Joe Milton.
And Dave, let's point this out because some people might come at you for what you said, but I agree with you on this because you said Brew McCoy knows how to illegally use his hands. Well, part of football, part of a skill in sports is being able to cheat a little bit and not get caught on a fundamental level. And
I mean, what I just said, if people aren't taking it the right way, let me just clear it up. That's a compliment.
Yeah. And I remember Lane Kiffin said this years ago, and he's right. The best offensive linemen are always moving before the ball is snapped. They're just not caught. And Michael Jordan in the NBA actually teaches players at his camps how to get away with pushing off when you're driving to the basket and not get called. And that's a skill. That's the skill with receivers. How to push off but not get caught pushing off is a very, very unique skill. And sorry, that's how you do it. How to sell how to make a pitch look like a strike as a catcher with the way you catch the ball in baseball. A skill. How to sell getting hit as a punter and drawing or rubbing the punter penalty. I mean, these are skills, and I'm sorry, like that's what you're right. Brew McCoy is actually very good at that.
Message board said he's a better Jawan Jennings. Great comparison here, but nobody's exactly the same player. Jennings probably a little bit faster. I don't think Tennessee's had a receiver as physically strong as Brew McCoy, at least not one that I can remember. Maybe
and Jennings has the best intangibles of any wide receiver that's ever played football. Intangibles. You want
Jennings?
him in your you want Jawan Jennings in your foxhole.
I didn't like the whole going off versus Vanderbilt and showing up and saying it's time for me to play quarterback. But nevertheless,
I did because the coaching staff was liars. So,
well, as we've learned, that is the truth. So I think Jawan Jennings, to me, is a really good comparison. Brew McCoy, though, slightly more physical and probably not quite as fast, but we'll see. I think he's also deceptively fast because he's not a long strider like a Jalen Hyatt was. And I think that he also is a guy that is probably going to time pretty well when he works on it. And here's the other thing that's so cool about Brew McCoy. I wouldn't say what I'm about to say unless it was true. I've not had one person say to me that Southern Cal transfer, has he been a malcontent in any shape, form, or fashion? And they've confirmed that. None of that. Just like I've heard none over the offseason that Joe Milton has been struggling. I've heard zero of that. So I think that I think Tennessee's in good shape with Brew McCoy. I think they've got a guy that can dominate a game, even though that might not mean 200 yards of receiving. He is their best player on the football team.
And I'm with more the Kelly Washington comparison than the Jawan Jennings comparison. And it's funny because you cover Kelly Washington and people thought he was a head case, and maybe he was, but you know what? I never heard anybody say about Kelly Washington. I feel like no one denied that he worked his tail off when he was healthy, when he was at Tennessee.
He was a bad teammate in the beginning, but he tried to get it right. And I will tell you this, that's a better comparison actually than Jawan. But I will tell you this, I asked a trainer, I said, who are the 3 hardest workers since you've been here? And it was Johnny Long, who had been there for like 25 years. And he says it's Peyton Manning, Jamal Lewis, and Kelly Washington. And there were about 3 guys that were cancers on that program, and he was there. And he was not one, and he wasn't even close to that as of the LSU game. Remember, he went around and patted every offensive lineman on the head after the offensive lineman didn't like his celebrations and stuff. He came on too strong. He knew that, but he was selling his brand. Nowadays, if he did that and he was on the cover of ESPN, the magazine, as the future, and they held a Photoshop for him, I think everybody'd say, good job marketing yourself. But back then, it seemed like a little much. Kelly Washington and Casey Clausen are by far, not even close, the 2 most misunderstood Vols that I've ever covered. I mean, if you don't want Casey Clausen to walk into your program, you better be Southern California, a guy that just won the Heisman Trophy. Because other than that, every program would be bettered by a Casey Clausen stepping in, even though he's not a great runner and is never going to be. And I hear he's not the Iceman anymore. He's more like the bald man.
He's losing his hair?
He shaved it. He shaved it. I mean, it may have been thinning just a little bit when I covered it.
Do you think now, particularly that do you think maybe Arian Foster's in that list of misunderstood Vols, or do you think he brought on he earned a lot of the hate that he got from fans?
Not misunderstood at all. That's him.
Yeah. I mean, well, well, also remember,
I'll give you a couple of examples. Making the media wait 45 minutes just to talk to him. And it was by design because he had already had a shower and he was just sitting in the locker room to make him wait because he thought it was funny. Coming out with the pro football is fake. I mean, all of this stuff. He's a weird bird that you hand the ball to. But ultimately, when did he start showing up around Tennessee?
04, 05, right around then?
Nope. No. I'm talking about after his playing days.
Oh, he didn't come back until like last year, I think, or something like that.
Yep. So at least Kelly Washington, you knew what you got. You got a mercenary. But Arian Foster is all kinds of messed up in the head. And I say that knowing that he wants to fight me. And he's called a radio station before and challenged me to a fist fight. And I passed. And that's why I'm still with you here today. I may be opinionated, but Caleb, I'm not stupid.